Statement the Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs, William Hague.
Mr. Speaker, with permission I will make a statement on Gaza, the Middle East peace process and Syria. The whole House will be united in concern both at the intolerable situation for the residents of southern Israel and the grave loss of life and humanitarian suffering in Gaza, including the particular impact on children.
James Arbuthnot.
Does my right honourable friend agree that there is a world of difference between Hamas, which specifically targets Israeli children, and Israel, which does its best to avoid killing Palestinian children?
Mr. Mark Pritchard.
Would the Secretary of State consider an EU security treaty with Israel?
Dr. Julian Lewis.
Does he therefore share my disappointment
Dr. Julian
of the
Lewis.
statement recently by President Morsi of Egypt that the present situation is an act of aggression solely by the Israelis?
Mike Freer.
With Hamas firing missiles on civilians while hiding behind civilians, isn't it they who are guilty of war crimes?
David Burrows.
No doubt has a key role to play given its proximity to Gaza and its government's proximity to Hamas. Can the Foreign Secretary therefore continue to encourage that role of Egypt, crucially a ceasing of the supply of weapons to the terrorists?
Robert Halfon.
Since the Israeli withdrawal in 2005, nearly 7,000 missiles have been fired by Hamas and Islamic Jihad onto Israeli towns.
Jessica Lee.
Israel has made genuine efforts to provide humanitarian assistance to Gaza, and this has been done despite the current hostilities, the increased number of rocket attacks. What discussions has the Foreign Secretary had with his Israeli counterpart as to the importance of this humanitarian support?
James Clapperson.
My right honourable friend assures me that it's the aim of our diplomacy not just to reduce these rocket attacks but to bring them to an end. Surely in this country we would not have put up with hundreds of long-range missiles being fired into our central population.
Mr. Gordon Henderson.
Speaker, would my right honourable friend agree with me that it's easy to call for Israel to show restraint from the safety of this chamber, but such restraint is difficult when you live with the daily threat of seeing your family and friends being wiped out by the rockets fired from Gaza?
Mr. Guido Bev.
Does my right honourable friend have any information on the supply of sophisticated weaponry to Hamas from the Iranian regime?
James Morris.
Would the Foreign Secretary agree with me that any sovereign country would feel a duty to protect its own citizens from such a threat?
Mr. Nigel Adams.
What assessment has the Foreign Secretary made as to the involvement of Egypt in the supplying of weapons to Hamas and other terrorist organisations?
Dr. Matthew Hoffler.
Speaker, according to Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, Israel's actions are actually in self-defence. Therefore, can I urge the Foreign Secretary and his government to provide support to Israel in her sovereign right to defend her people, her people.
Israel will be happily give up land, but how can it have a guaranteed security and peace?
Alex Shelbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My right honourable friend's comments about Iran supporting Hamas, doesn't that illustrate starkly the threat to Israel of an emboldened Hamas and Hezbollah if an anti-Semitic Iran becomes a nuclear-armed power?
Mr. Richard Ottaway.
Over the weekend, Israel was widely condemned for a military strike on an international media centre in Gaza in breach of the Geneva Convention. Can he confirm, in fact, that it was a base for Islamic Jihad and the only person who lost their life was their military commander?
Mr. Bob Blackman.
It's now clear that far from being homemade rockets that are being sent from Gaza, these are serious missiles that are supplied by Iran.